Hello. In our playlist entitled The Realists, I bring to you today another piece by W.H. Auden. The piece is entitled The Unknown Citizen. One wonders that one has heard of a monument to the unknown soldier. But what is the unknown citizen, or who is the unknown citizen? Let us explore in this piece with W.H. Auden. The poet W.H. Auden lived from 1907 to 1973. He's a child when the First World War hits the world, which is 1914 to 1918, and then a young man when the world lives through the Second World War, 1939 to 1945. He lives through the Great Depression, as it's called, a very dark period in human history, and then, of course, through these wars. And his intellect is shaped by how the world is changing in the aftermath of these incidents. And in this particular poem, it is political, it is satirical, and also, to an extent, it has melancholia to it. It has sadness to it. That we are living in a world where the governments want us to be a citizen that they can completely predict, a citizen that they can completely control, and a citizen who will not waver from his path of duty. The governments want to produce copies of us. They do not want us to have an identity. They do not want us to have a voice. And this is what he speaks of here. And then he says that like a monument is built to an unknown soldier, but soldiers, we know, fight wars for their country. It's a very patriotic thing to go to the monument of the unknown soldier. You don't know the names of the thousands of soldiers who died from so many families that they come from, and yet you pay homage to the fact that they die in the way of defending their country, on the path to defending their country. But here, the title itself is satirical. The state or the government is putting up a monument to the unknown citizen. The state is celebrating the fact that there are dumb citizens who do not question authority and who do their duties the way they're supposed to. And they're very predictable in their behavior and they're very watched. In many ways, you can keep an eye on them. And therefore, the title itself is a satire on the fact that the modern man is living perhaps a life that he should not be really proud of. The Unknown Citizen by W.H. Auden. The way it begins, in brackets, first, he states very clearly that this is a monument number and this monument has been erected by the state. If you see, this marble monument is erected by the state is the bracket by which the poem begins. This is right under the title of the poem, and there is a number given as well. And this number also denotes that, again, I would think it's a satire on the fact that we are just a number to the government, maybe a Aadhaar card or a social security number, and they want to trace everything about us through this particular number. And also, it could denote that why name this person? There is absolutely no name because this is a monument to the unknown citizen. The unknown soldier is still worthy of respect. The unknown citizen here completely denotes satire on the part of the poet. He starts, he was found by the Bureau of Statistics to be one against whom there was no official complaint, and all the reports on his conduct agree that in the modern sense of an old-fashioned word, he was a saint, for in everything he did, he served the greater community. The Bureau of Statistics. This is an organization, a government body that keeps a record of the number of citizens, their names, their addresses, perhaps their profiles, and now we have biometrics as well. So this Bureau of Statistics found out that there was no complaint against him. He led a very honorable life, and all reports on his conduct agree that in the modern sense of an old-fashioned word, he was saintly. So in the modern sense, to be saintly basically does not mean someone who's renounced the world. So the word is old-fashioned in the sense that it denotes saints, people who renounced the world in the days bygone. But he's a saint in the sense that he totally follows by the law. He does not waver from his path. He lives a very predictable, very contained, very defined life. And therefore, he's a modern saint. And the last line here, for in everything he did, he served the greater community. This particular line, it shows that Auden was influenced and, of course, was witnessing how socialism and communism as philosophies had taken over the world in the last 100 years. 1848, Engel and Marx write the Communist Manifesto, and it's roughly 100 years when Auden is writing this piece, and he wants to say that this is what a communist government wants you to be, or a communist ideology wants you to be, that everybody should be same, that everybody should sacrifice their sense of personal identity towards the greater good, and therefore you serve the community. The community is larger than the individual. This is no time and place to be discussing these philosophies of socialism and of communism, but here in this particular line, there certainly is a satire or a sort of a dig that Auden takes against the communist ideology, that if he serves the greater community, then the purpose of his life is served. The purpose of his life is not to realize his true potential and to sharpen his identity or to take his identity to a very unique level, but it is to serve the greater community. Let's see ahead. Except for the war, till the day he retired, he worked in a factory and never got fired, but satisfied his employers, Fudge Motors Incorporated. Yet he wasn't a scab or odd in his views, for his union reports that he paid his dues. Our report on his union shows it was sound, and our social psychology workers found that he was popular with his mates and liked a drink. Except for the war. This is to say that he did fight in the war. Everybody had to do military duty in those days, and in the Second World War is denoted here. He did fight in the war, and except for that soldier's duty that he did, he worked in an office. And for all his life, he did that till the time he must have retired from the office. He was a very dedicated worker of a motor company. Maybe he wanted to write Ford Motors here, but he's written Fudge Motors, and this is open to speculation, but basically a giant corporation that needs loyal, predictable employees like the unknown citizen who go to their job from 10 to 6 every day or 9 to 7 every day and follow it through with honesty, with loyalty, with a sense of duty. So, and he satisfies his employers, the poet says very, very clearly. Then he wasn't a scab or odd in his views. He never ever uttered a word which had the notion of revolt in it, or which had the notion of going against the popular accepted views either of his union or of the company or of the government. And the word scab here denotes, a scab is a person who's not very popular or who is looked upon with contempt. Nobody looked upon him with contempt. He was rather a likable soul because he never said anything to displease anyone. And then you see that 3 lines denote very carefully that how the government keeps an eye on you. For his union reports that he paid his dues. So the government can access the union, which can give them a report that yes, this person paid the dues. And then the government also has an eye on the union. Our report on his union shows it was sound. So the government is keeping an eye on the person, then on the union that he is a member of, and therefore from both sources they say that we confirm he was sound. And our social psychology workers found that he was popular with his mates and he enjoyed a drink. The government is even following you when you are enjoying your time with your friends. The social psychology department of the government is reporting on these habits of the citizens to the government, which are very personal to them. This is the unknown citizen. The press are convinced that he bought a paper every day and that his reactions to advertisements were normal in every way. Policies taken out in his name proved that he was fully insured, and his health card showed he was once in the hospital but left it cured. Both producers' research and high-grade living declare that he was fully sensible to the advantages of the installment plan and had everything necessary to the modern man: a phonograph, a radio, a car, and a Frigidaire. Now he starts to name all the agencies through which the government can keep an eye on us. What paper do you subscribe to? Do you actually subscribe to a paper or not? And then what are the kind of products that you buy? I almost feel that Auden is writing in the times that we are living in today. I buy a product on a merchant's site, and the next day, if I'm accessing my Gmail, I get advertisements for similar products constantly. Someone's keeping an eye on what am I buying, and he's almost saying these things like they're happening to us today, that you are being kept an eye on in every possible way, and therefore the government is ensuring that yes, they are really in line. Maybe it is not always the government and it is companies or large corporations, but then this is the nexus that how this money feeds into the politics and politics feeds back into it. So the press were convinced that the unknown citizen did buy a newspaper and he reacted to advertisements like most normal people do. Then he also had insurance policies. Insurance policies, these are nice ways of confirming your credit score, maybe, or the fact that you pay all your installments, and also the fact that you are worried about securing the future. And this is a profile which the government likes because they find you predictable. And then both producers research and high grade living. So these are research organizations, maybe they're governmental in nature, maybe they're private bodies, but they are researching into how a person is spending their money. So he exactly knew how to invest his money, how to save, and how to make sure that his family is well provided for and the future is secure. And then the last line, that he owned a phonograph, a radio, a car, and a Frigidaire. Frigidaire is a brand that started to make refrigerators early on, and he owned all these things which a modern man's house must have. So he's this middle class person living in maybe 1950s world. I wouldn't say Britain because I do not know if Auden was picturing a European personality or an American personality. Auden was born in near Birmingham in the UK, but then he moved to the US in his early 30s. So he's just picturing a citizen of the world and yet calling him the unknown citizen. So he's just picturing a modern home and he's saying that this is what a middle class person usually has in his house. He goes on to say, our researchers into public opinion are content that he held the proper opinions for the time of the year. When there was peace, he was for peace. When there was war, he went. He was married and added 5 children to the population, which our eugenist says was the right number for a parent of his generation. Our research is into public opinion. So the government is even keeping, and look, the pronoun used here is our. And we have read in the beginning of the poem that it is a monument erected by the state. So the state is calling itself our. So it's the government who's saying that our researchers, so government researchers into public opinion, they really want to know which side of the debate you are when it comes to politics. So when there was peace, he was for peace, and when there was war, he fought for his country. So public opinion bodies also suggested that this is the right man to have. He exactly goes by how the government wishes him to go with his life or to go along with the decisions that he makes in his life. And then he was married and he added 5 children to the population. And the eugenist who's an expert in eugenics, which is the science by way of which we know that how genes can be worked upon to make better individuals in time. So it's a process by way of which you can almost interfere with nature's processes of creating a population that has more favored traits than a population which has traits which you do not like so much. How successful it is, we'll leave it to the scientists. But the eugenist, he said that this is great. He should have produced 5 children because that ensures we are going to have a population of a certain size in a certain era in the future. So he uses the term eugenist, that this is to the extent that the government is keeping an eye on you. And even if they're not keeping an eye on you, this is their expectation. This is what they call a citizen, and that is why they erect a monument to this unknown citizen. And then, when you come to the end of the poem, you realize that the title is not just satirical, it is very sad. It is a truth that is stated in a way which is satirical, but it's the sad truth. They don't want you to have an identity. Maybe they're not keeping an eye on you by employing a eugenist to say if you're doing the right thing in the way you are creating your children or in the way your family is going about multiplying itself. No, that may not be the case, but it certainly is the case that they expect you to abide by certain laws, that they expect you to go on a certain path which they find predictable and they find is suitable to their needs. And our teachers report that he never interfered with their education. And then finally, they also have teachers or academics who report on citizens and they say that, yes, he never really interfered with their education and he simply accepted what was taught to him. Now comes the turning point in the poem and also its conclusion. Was he free? Was he happy? He was everything the government would want a good citizen to be. He worked for the community, his union liked him, he never had an iota of revolution within him. He was for peace when there was peace, he was for war when there was war, and he went to fight those wars. He had insurance policies, and he was a married man, and he had a group friend circle, maybe he enjoyed a drink or two at times. He wasn't really not likable by any segment of the society. So yes, he was all these things, but the poet asks two very fundamental questions. Was he free? To be free is to have the ability to realize your unique potential. It is to have the ability to have a voice. It is to have the ability to become a unique individual and to be able to say when you do not like what everybody else might believe in. Just because a large amount, a large percentage of a population believes by something doesn't mean it's true. Sometimes mob intellect is really faulted. So was he free? Was he free to be himself? You decide. And the poet leaves the question to the reader. Was he happy? You decide. It is the government telling you that we have erected a monument in his honor, and these are all the qualities that he has. So it's a satirical way by which the poet puts forth that these are all the qualities that the government wishes you to have, but be cautious. In this sense, you perhaps are sacrificing your freedom and your happiness. The question is absurd. And then he answers it. He's saying, because it's the voice is of a government representative saying that the monument has been erected, the poet is not using his voice. It is the government representative talking about the government. So the government representative says that was he free, was he happy? These questions are absurd. Why do you want to ask these questions? Had anything been wrong, we should certainly have heard. To be free or to be happy is wrong in the government's perspective. How dare you have an individuality? How dare you think you have a voice and you do not go with the larger mob? How dare you not follow? So the government official says that had he been free or had he been happy, then there would have been something wrong. And had there been something wrong, we would certainly have heard. But we didn't hear about it. His report card is clean, and therefore we erect a monument in his honor. The Unknown Citizen. Please follow the playlist called Realists on the Pratyancha channel. We'll bring you more pieces in time. See you again. Goodbye.